Hello and welcome to the second Penfolds Vintage Years event here at the Hospital Club in London. Today we're going to be celebrating the Penfolds Vintage Years event, which looks at drawing together wonderful ingredients in winemaking alongside celebrated personalities in business today. In terms of our Vintage Years, we're going to be celebrating this with Greg Dyke, the ex-Director General for the BBC, and also our Chief Winemaker at Penfolds, Mr. Peter Gago.
Normally I get invited to speak for one of a number of reasons, but the main one being that I spent 4 years as Director General of the BBC and people want to know about it, and particularly about my rather spectacular departure. In truth, it's now some years since I left the BBC, and I've done a range of things since. When I first left, I did what politicians do. I announced that I wanted to spend more time with my family. What I discovered after about 6 months was that my family didn't want to spend a lot more time with me. So instead I got into the sort of portfolio life that I lead now, which include talks like this. Now normally when I'm asked to speak at events, I offer 3 subjects. And I only do that because David Foss once told me that if you're going to do the speaking circuit, you can't only offer 1 subject. He's cracked it because he offers 3 subjects, and whichever one they choose, he delivers exactly the same speech. Now, my 3 subjects are leadership, democracy, and weapons of mass destruction. And I usually get asked to speak about the first of those, which is leadership and organisational change. And the only reason I do is because of the events of a single day, which was the day I was thrown out of the BBC. On that day, literally thousands of my staff right across the country took to the streets to protest against my departure. Others had a whip round and raised £12,000 to pay for an advert in the Daily Telegraph, protesting. The unions organised a protest march, which was ironic because it was the only helpful thing they did in 4 years. But I did receive more than 6,000 emails from my staff saying I was sorry I'd left. Now, I'll only read you one because they're a bit self-serving, but it says, the only way I can come to terms with the extraordinary events of the last 48 hours is to pay testimony to the vision and energy you brought to the BBC. Men, women, and even journalists cried today. When Penfolds approached me about choosing my vintage year, I thought, well, any of those times would have been interesting to talk about tonight as part of my year. But in the end, I decided against them all. And I would like to thank Penfolds for inviting me to speak here tonight, as the concept of sharing successful years in combination with a wine appealed to me enormously. Anyway, when deciding what year to choose, I was told that the audience tonight was going to be full of young entrepreneurs who were not coming for the wine, yeah, I believe that, but were going to be coming because they want to be enthralled by me. Well, hardly. Now, I'm not saying I was misled, but as I've looked around here tonight, I can't judge who are the entrepreneurs, but I can say there are a few here who might be pushing it a bit to call themselves young. Anyway, what I thought was, well, what would young entrepreneurs want to know about my career? So I thought back and decided not to talk about the comings and goings, as funny as they were, but instead to talk about a year when everything went well, when a bunch of us called it right, and as a result we collectively made £50 million between us. Personally, I made a lot of money as a direct result of the actions we took that year. The year was 1991. Some of you were probably born in that year, which also happened to be a rather good year for Penfolds wine. Now there's a coincidence. Anyway, so why was 1991 such a vintage year? Well, there was intrigue, there was risk, there was drama, there was great comradeship, and of course, in the end, we won. It was game, set, and match to us. But most of all, and I think this is true of all business, most of all, it was exciting. If in your life you can have a year as exciting and rewarding as 1991 was for me, then you'll be pretty lucky. Thank you.
The fun doesn't end there. It's a great privilege for me to now be able to introduce to you a real great within winemaking. Over from Australia, it's the chief winemaker for the Penfolds wineries. It's Mr. Peter Gago, and he's going to be taking you through a tasting in a second with some wine that will be distributed to you. And I'd like to introduce you, Peter Gago.
You have in your glass, some people already have an empty glass, I can see from up here. You do have the 1991 Bin 28, a Shiraz, or if you like, Syrah. Greg has a better bottle though, he has the 91 Grange, but we won't go there. We won't offer a corkscrew to share in that 91 vintage. But can I just say a few things firstly about Penfolds? We've been doing business now for 166 years. Where I live, Adelaide, the colony was started back in 1836 and Penfolds started 8 years later in 1844. You have, all of you now, in front of you too, a book, and I should sort of explain what that book is, because we're talking numbers, we're talking vintage years, and this book is all about drinking windows. Now, in the world of wine, and I know in this room there are some wine experts, I know that in this room there are some people who barely drink wine. But in the world of wine, what I like about it is basically there are no absolutes. And we had a conversation before coming out here a little earlier. You know, most of the time in wine, when it comes to selecting wines, picking wines, vintages and whatever, we're wrong. You know, wine is about enjoyment. Wine is about preference. However, texts such as this, and this is the 6th edition, I often joke, you know, we come from Adelaide, Australia, it took us 6 goes to get the book right. No, no, no. Every 4 to 5 years, we review all wines in our museum cellar. We open up the library, and a panel of judges from around the world come and taste all of the vintages through the 1990s, the 80s, the 70s, the 60s, the 50s, and their drinking windows are in that book. Now, you can go to 1991, you can go probably to the year of your birth, and you'll find wines from that vintage in there, from Penfolds. Now, a little later this evening, you'll be trying wines across the portfolio here. One to watch out for is the Sononry. Now, this particular vintage, just released, the 2006, is the 50th consecutive release by Penfolds. Tonight, whether you're into wine or not, please remember, there is no one right nor wrong in the way of wine, including the people in this book, the judges who put it together. It's about what you like and it's about your preferences. So perhaps tonight then when we taste together, and I'll be around for a little while talking about some of the wine with some of you perhaps. There are over 100 of you here. I won't be able to chat to you all. But let's go out there, enjoy the evening. We've had an amazing talk here. The rest of the night is about enjoyment and drinking some good wine. Thank you very much.
Great speaker, Q&A, fantastic. Didn't know they did white wines, and they're actually really nice.
Very relaxed, really accessible. Greg's chat was brilliant, kind of brought you into the year, which was really an interesting way to bring us into the whole wine thing.
The wine tasting, though, was definitely been the pinnacle of my night.
Well, I thought it was a superb evening. Greg Dyke spoke wonderfully well about his vintage year, which I thought was extremely interesting. 1991 for him was pretty tumultuous in terms of his payout from the BBC. And equally, Peter Gago spoke wonderfully well about 1991 being a vintage year for him, and also the quality of the wine. So all in all, a fabulous event, and I can't wait for the next one.